Have you ever looked at your child and wondered, why won't they just do it? Do the work they need to get done. I don't understand why they just keep putting these things off. Or why does it feel like they're just not trying to me? And maybe, just maybe, whether you've said it out loud or not, you might quietly have thought to yourself, or is my kid just being lazy and not even trying? Well, welcome everyone. I am Dara and I am the host of this podcast, Designed to Win. And I am so glad that you are here with me today. Today's episode is one, like most of mine are, that I feel very strongly about because I have lived it, seen it, walked through it, not only as an educator, but on the side of a parent. And I want to say something to you right now at the very beginning of this episode. Your child is not lazy if they've been labeled that way. And please, whatever you do, don't let a teacher or anyone else tell you otherwise until you have verified it personally for yourself what the true meaning of lazy is, and that's what your child has done or doing. Well, I have a son that is now 36 years old, but he struggled in school when he was very young. I didn't know much about dyslexia, but eventually that's what he was diagnosed to be struggling with. But back then, there was not a lot of understanding about how to help kids with dyslexia and support for that matter. So when he was in the second grade, he would cry a lot about school and he just didn't like going to school. And we knew that he was really struggling with reading. We just weren't really sure, and we were trying to figure out ways to get help for him because I didn't know much about dyslexia and how to help him at that time. So he had a teacher that was in the classroom with him who did not what she felt like as second graders, the students should be able to read and read well enough to read the instructions on paperwork that they would hand out. Things are a lot different these days. They have iPads and tablets and things, but there's still the expectation of them being able to read the instructions on the iPad or instructions given that teachers put out on Google, all those kinds of things. So when my son was in the second grade, like I said before, he would get assignments, papers that were handed out to him, like all the other students when they were studying math or reading or language arts, social studies, those kinds of things. They would do papers. And the teacher would hand out the papers, and they were expected to read the assignment on the paper and do it and read the instructions. But when she handed out the assignments in class, my son often didn't understand what he was supposed to do with the papers. And so he tried, but he didn't know what he would try to copy off other students or he would just sit there and he wouldn't get it done and he would turn it in. And he did this without the teacher helping him. She wouldn't give him any help. She refused. So she would take up the papers and grade them and hand them back. And he came home with several papers, and on the top of his paper in big red letters said, "You're just lazy," with a big F on it because he didn't complete the work. Now, let me just say something. Most parents, especially the mamas out there, if you just heard me say that, I'm sure you probably wondered how I reacted to that. Well, let me just say the mama bear came out in me a little bit. I was pretty upset about that because my son was also very upset about it. He didn't know what it said on the paper, but the other students knew and they teased him about it. And the teacher told him that he was lazy. So needless to say, My child was not lazy, and I knew he wasn't lazy. He was struggling. He was struggling to read, struggling to be there in class because he didn't know half the time what was going on because the teacher wasn't helping him. So I made a decision to go to the principal and address it with the principal. And we decided that it was in my child's best interest. I strongly suggested to the principal that he be removed from the classroom that he was in with that teacher and put in another classroom with a teacher who would be willing to work with my son. And they did put him in another classroom, and that teacher was wonderful, and she worked with him and she worked with us to try to help him to find the things that he needed to get help with and to be able to, start trying to learn to read. And it made a huge difference for my son. Even today, he has talked about that as old as he is. So, parents, what I want to talk about today is your child is probably not lazy in the terms that we call lazy, of just not wanting to do anything. What many parents see in their home a lot of times looks like procrastination. It looks like avoidance, and you have a lot of incomplete work, or your kids just shut down and they absolutely are not going to do anything. And there's a lot of emotional frustration, probably a lot of arguments, a lot of fighting back. And from the outside, it can look like that they don't care, but it's not. It's just that they're struggling, but they're not lazy. Many students that have some of these things that I mentioned, they struggle with ADHD, they struggle with dyslexia like my son did. They'll struggle with processing things and having problems with memory issues, short-term memory issues. They, a lot of times, struggle with executive function processing and skills. So it makes it really a challenge for them. It doesn't mean that they're lazy again. It means that their brain just processes things differently. And some students, they just don't know where to begin. They feel extremely overwhelmed by too many steps that are given to them. They just need to take one step at a time. They struggle to organize their thoughts, much less papers in a backpack or papers in a notebook that they have to keep up with. So they just shut things down. They just shut down when things feel too big for them. So instead of just starting somewhere, they just freeze. They'd rather just not do it at all. Well, procrastination, it shows itself as confusion and overwhelm, fear of failure, and just not knowing where to start. It's not that they don't care and they don't want to try. They're just kind of frozen. They don't know where to start. My son was that way at times when he was younger. As he got older and he got the help that he needed, he wasn't like that. I think that many of these students really do care deeply about school. They want to be successful. They want to learn and accomplish things, but they just don't have the tools that they need yet. They might not have gotten them from a teacher because the teacher wasn't willing to listen or to learn how to help that child. But that's something that you as a parent can look at. What can we do to give my child the tools that they may need? How are they struggling? Because over time, what happens is, and you probably already have this with your child, as I'm talking about this, you're going, yep, that's us. This is how we are. But over time, some students begin to believe the narrative that I'm not smart. I can't do this. And why bother? Because I always mess up anyway. And then, when they're labeled lazy and that's placed on them, it sticks. And that's where their confidence begins to break. And that's a whole other part of that. So Instead of instead of asking, why won't they do it? Or asking your child, why are you not getting things done? Maybe what we need to start asking is, what is getting in my child's way? What's getting in their way from them getting these things done? That one question can absolutely change everything for your child. Trust me, I've seen it being a parent and also being an educator for so many years. They don't need to have more pressure on them. What they need is they need to have some clarity and break things down in small steps for them to be able to do the things that they need to do to move them forward. They need structure filled with routines and planners and systems to help them to be able to organize themselves. That's huge for kids with learning differences. Whether they're ADHD or they're dyslexic or they're autistic, routines, planners, and systems are the best things for them if you can get the right ones in place for them. That's why my planner is something that I have worked so hard on to develop over the years, because I've seen this. Giving them support by giving them a safe space to ask for help. I know that kids often feel like that they can't ask their teachers for help, but then when they come home, they don't want to ask parents for help. But try to keep that communication open so they do feel like you are their safe space to come and talk to them when they're struggling in school, because they may feel like the teachers and administrators don't even want to listen. So you need to try to be their safe space. And lastly, strength-based learning. Let them use what they're good at. There's so many different ways they can do this, and there's so many different ways you can ask for this in school, but also just at home, recognizing that if you can take the thing that they love the most and apply somehow the subjects that they struggle with or the areas they struggle with that, it makes such a huge difference for them. I did that many years ago with a student that was in high school that was autistic, and he loved to draw and paint and stuff. He loved art class, but he struggled with English so much so that he shut down, just like we we're talking about. He just absolutely was stuck in English, and he was struggling so hard with it. So we came up with an idea of him creating a board game around his English that he needed to learn the grammar. And he did. That sparked an interest for him. And so then he wanted to learn, and he wanted to figure out how to make it easier for other kids to learn. And he created a board game that helped them to learn the grammar that he was studying. It was a really neat thing that he did. But that's where strength-based learning comes from. Just an idea to share with you and give you an example of what I was talking about. And lastly, if you're feeling frustrated as a parent, trust me, on the other side of this podcast, aside from me, there's many other parents that feel the same way. I have talked to a lot of them over the years. And remember, your child is not broken. They were created the way they are for a reason. They may learn different. Their brain may process different, and it may be something totally different than what you've ever experienced or can understand, but you can learn to understand. They just learn different, and that's okay. And they have gifts and talents that we wouldn't even understand. The biggest part of this is to try to realize that they may be our children, but they are also different, and they may learn completely different than we have, and they may need tools and resources to do the things that they need to do to be successful and succeed in school. So I hope that some of the things I have mentioned tonight will help you out, and it will make you stop and think, my kid really isn't lazy. They're just struggling with some of these things. And maybe some of the things that I've looked at, like not wanting to do the work, or they come home from school and they're done. They're done for the day. They don't want to do any more schoolwork. what can I do to make things work for my child so they can be successful? What do we need to do? There's lots of resources out there. You can visit my website for some of those resources. I've written a book on procrastination and motivation. I have a planner that's available also. But I have other resources on there that are some tips and things that you can use, like I mentioned in this podcast today, on helping your child move forward one step at a time to move past where they might be stuck. So, and to help you parent, to encourage you parents out there that are listening, that your child's probably not lazy. There's not too many of them that I've seen that are truly, truly lazy. It's just a matter of they don't know where to start. They don't know how to get to one place to the other. And those are things that you can help them with. So if you have enjoyed this episode tonight and it has encouraged you out there, I would love for you to follow my podcast and share it with others so that you don't miss anything that's coming up. Next week, I'm going to be talking about executive function skills. And if you don't know what that is, or you struggle with that all year with your student, please listen to that episode. I'll be talking more about that. And it can be something that you start thinking about for next year and some of the how to start off the school year on a better foot for next year. I know we're just closing out the school year, but it might be some things that you can practice and get started on over the summertime. And I'll probably come back and revisit this episode before school starts back, but try to catch it next week if you get an opportunity and share it with others. And also, before I get off today, I want to remind you that I do have an online community where families can come together to support one another, encourage each other, and share resources and things that they've done that might have helped their child to succeed. So I'd love for you to get on there and look at that. You can look at it through Facebook. It's the Design to Win community, and it's a special education community for your child. So I want you to understand that you are not walking this journey alone. So please, please know that. That's why I'm doing this podcast. And I do what I do because I felt so alone for so long when my kids were growing up and I just didn't even know where to start. So I just want you to know that you're not alone and I'm walking this journey with you. And I really appreciate you being here and sharing the podcast with others so others will not feel alone as well. And please remember, as we close this podcast out tonight, I want you to remember that your child has great value. Your child has great purpose in this world. And most importantly, your child is designed to win. Until next time, blessings.